If you're planning a Norway cruise, there are some things that you need to know. Even though I did a lot of research, there were still some things that surprised me. In fact, I made one pretty important mistake that I regretted almost every day. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. Now, even though I've cruised to some areas that I would have thought maybe had some similarities to Norway, so for example, Alaska and even Canada, New England, there were some things that I found out in Norway that really did surprise me. So in this video, I'm going to go over some things that you'll want to know before you go on a Norway cruise. This includes things that you want to make sure that you pack. This includes what you can expect when you get to cruise ports of call, and some traps that you don't want to fall for. Now, before I get started, I did want to mention that if you like this video, if you find it helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, then please do give this video a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Let's get started. Now, these are not necessarily in any particular order, but they definitely are some things that are pretty important that you'll want to know before you go. So, number one mistake not to make is not to be prepared for the weather. Now, I thought I would be prepared for the weather because, well, first I should start at the very beginning. When we first decided to go on this cruise, it was in the third week of June. So I expected it to be a pretty warm cruise. I didn't expect it to be hot, but I did think, well, this is summer. This is good. I quickly found out when I researched that I did need to be prepared for cooler and wetter weather. So we were definitely watching the weather all the time. And I pretty much had my packing all done with my cooler weather clothes, with my layers. So now I almost made a mistake, and I caught myself on the day that we were flying out. We took a look at the weather, and the forecast showed that the weather had sort of changed. And it was now forecast to be a lot warmer in some of the cruise ports than what we had expected. So literally, the day that we were leaving, I looked at my rack of clothing and I took 2 light sundresses just in case, and my husband ended up bringing an extra pair of shorts. So the weather in Norway can be really quite variable, so it's important be prepared for weather that is warm, but be also prepared for weather where you're going to need to wear a sweater and a light lined rain jacket. I think the lining is quite important because there can be some dampness, so you want to make sure that you're covered for that. Something else sort of not to do, or at least not to worry about, is don't worry about bringing Norwegian Crone. Now, if this is something you have or you want to bring, definitely you can do so. But I did try to avoid this because I thought I'm really not going to be probably back in Norway in the next couple of years. You never know, in the way that I might take out Euro because I know that I'm going to be back a little bit more often. What we found out when we were researching is that in Norway, they pretty much take credit cards everywhere. Even our cruise director had told us this. So I was really glad that I did not bring any Crone. And something that we also found out is that if you do want to tip, and obviously this is not something that is necessary when you're there, but when we were on an excursion, we did see that other people were tipping, and we did tip our tour guide. We did tip in euros. Now, a big mistake is thinking it's going to be like Alaska, even though when you look at photos and videos, I would say it looks quite similar. The culture is very different in Alaska from Norway. And in Norway, one of the biggest differences that we found is the fact that we really didn't see any wildlife throughout the cruise. And even the excursions were not really wildlife focused. Instead, it was really all about the absolutely gorgeous scenery and the fjords. Not being prepared to walk. Now, there are definitely different things that you can do in Norway, some of the different excursions that don't require walking or hiking. But Norway, the people are pretty fit, and things like hiking and kayaking, walking up a lot of stairs seems to be pretty commonplace for them. And I know this is not everybody, so it is something to keep in mind if you go on a Norway cruise. Which brings me to another point about excursions. It is a mistake to think that you need to book an excursion in every port. This is something that I saw mentioned in a lot of my research, but when we were on the cruise, we found that probably maybe half the people on the ship told us that they did not book excursions. They got off the ship, they walked around the villages, and they really enjoyed that. Or sometimes they hiked on their own. They did some different things on their own. They sat at cafes, they strolled. So that is something that you can do in many of the different cruise ports of call. But something to remember is that some of the cruise ports are going to be quite large, depending on where you go, and other ports are going to be quite small. Now, the other side of the coin is not booking excursions. There are some excursions that I don't think that I could have done elsewhere, and I'm so glad that I did them. For example, in Idfjord, we did sea kayaking that the sea was smooth as glass. It was like being in a lake. It was just incredible. We were able to kayak right next to the cruise ship and in the waters with the incredible mountains and waterfalls all around us. It was really something that I'm so glad that we did. And other people we were sailing with did a waterfall and waffles excursion, and they were thrilled with it. So I do think, again, the key is balancing that out, doing your research for each port to decide what you want to do. Not expecting Norway to be so expensive. Now, Norway just is more expensive than other countries that you might be used to, even in Europe. Now, we did start off our cruise in Rotterdam, and so we flew into Amsterdam, and I thought Amsterdam was a little bit on the pricey side, but when we went to Norway, we were like, ooh, it is really expensive here. Now, in that way, I guess I'm glad I brought a credit card, because I sort of just put it on my credit card and I didn't notice. But if you are on a budget, this is something to think about. Now, I'm going to share with you my big mistake that I did that I regretted. It has to do with something that I did not think of packing that I should have, and you might want to pack that as well. But first, I wanted to talk about something that I never really hear people talking about, but we noticed a few days into our cruise, and this is not expecting the culture differences, some of them, in Norway. Now, beyond the fact that the people are overall pretty fit, and obviously nature is a big focus for the Norwegians, the other thing that I wasn't expecting is how quiet the atmosphere is. Now, in the villages, it was quite quiet. You could really hear the streams. It was so nice. But then we went to one of the bigger cities, Kristiansand. And as we were walking through even the city, we're like, people just don't talk loud. So that really was something that surprised me. Please let me know if you've ever been to Norway, if this is something you noticed. It definitely was a big contrast to most of the other cities that I've ever been to, not only in North America, but in Europe. Expecting to see the Northern Lights. Now, I can't tell you how many people asked me when I went on my Norwegian Fjords cruise, did you see the Northern Lights? Now, the Northern Lights, it is something that is seasonal. So if it is something important to you to see, you'll really want to time your cruise. Even then, it's not a guarantee. But more than likely, you're not going to see the Northern Lights if you're there during the summer. So our cruise was actually June 22nd. We did not see any Northern Lights. Now, I did research this, and it seems like March, April are the times, as well as September, October are the more likely times, and other times are also November through February, where you do have a chance of seeing them between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Underestimating the midnight sun. Now, this was something that completely took me off guard. I knew about it, but when you experience it, it is really something different. It completely changed even your body clock, because at midnight in Norway, it really looked like it could have been during the afternoon. And this is the part where I guess I made a little bit of a mistake. So firstly, should you get a balcony cabin? We had a balcony cabin. I definitely think it's worth it, because at all times of the day and even the night and early morning when you're sailing in to those cruise ports of call through the fjords, it is magnificent and the landscape is very close to you. So definitely a balcony, I think, is worth it. I did wake up one morning and I went out onto the bow of the ship when we were sailing into Idfjord, because it was recommended. And while it was very interesting on the bow, I have to say, I really enjoyed it on my balcony. So I think that that's absolutely fine. But the mistake that I made is not bringing a sleep mask. Now, while I do actually have this on my packing list for a long haul flight, for instance, I don't actually bring it. I just know a lot of people do, but I like to wake up with the natural light. So I like to go to bed with my blinds or my curtains wide open. Well, this presented a little bit of a problem because I did not sleep well most of my cruise in Norway. I loved it. It was just incredible. but I wish I brought a sleep mask. I do think that I needed to let my body shut down a little bit. And I think I was just way too used to that it gets dark at night. And it really doesn't in Norway, at least at the time of year that I was there. Now, I do have more information about our Norway cruise. I will leave that in the next video in case you do want to check it out. But I'd love to hear from you. Please let me know, firstly, if you've been to Norway. Let me know any of your tips and tricks. I know it's going to be helpful to other people as well as your own insights. And if you are cruising to Norway, then please let me know your questions. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye for now and happy cruising.